Another classic Sydney Derby awaits. Toby Green is on fire and the Swans are third on the ladder. Even though we're missing two of our biggest stars, it's in their hands to make this the best start since 2012. What an omen that can be. I'm Justin and with me is Heather. This Thursday night, it's the SwansCast Extra, the number one Sydney Swans weekend preview podcast. We've got the match preview, we'll give you our matchups, key points, predictions, and the weekend forecast. Heather, how are you? How has your week been?
Hello, Justin. Yeah, pretty good, actually. I've been extremely busy at work, but I keep thinking about the weekend, mainly because I live in the country in New South Wales, but I'll be driving up to Sydney for a bit of a visit and certainly to attend the Sydney Swans GWS match. So there's been a bit of excitement in my life, just even thinking about it. And I'm looking forward to meeting you there, actually, in person.
Yes, this will, believe it or not, we've been doing podcasts together since 2017, 2018. You've featured in over a dozen podcasts, I want to say, Heather. And we've never actually met in person, which is kind of funny on this one. But given that most of our guests are spread out around Australia, it's not that big of a surprise. But me and Mrs. Bloggs, we're making a day trip up to Sydney, flying up in the morning and flying back.
It's going to be an excellent match, and I've had a look at the forecast. They're talking about a tiny few drip drops of rain, but I reckon it's going to be fantastic no matter what.
Oh, it should be brilliant, and I'm looking forward to it. The last time I was at a GWS game was that fateful 2018 final.
Yes, absolutely, and I'm trying to actually erase that from my mind. It was pretty ugly. I actually at one point thought that it was going to be the lowest goals scored by any team in history by the Sydney Swans, but fortunately that didn't quite work out. But let's just say that was a bit of a low light in our podcast time together.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it was the epitome of junk time goals. We got the last two when it didn't even matter anymore, but thankfully we scored 30 points, which unfortunately was almost our average score for all the last season.
Yeah, you know what? I'm looking forward to seeing Lance Franklin actually kick 30 points on his own on Saturday.
Yes. You never know. You might reach 980 goals today. Well, that would probably be about 24 goals, but one can only dream. Throw back to like the 70s and 80s when it was like 35 goals a game.
Yeah, I think GWS would have to field like 10 players for that to happen. But,
the rate they're going, they might only have 10 fit players by the end of a match sometime soon.
And that's something I think that we're going to discuss as we progress through the cast.
Yes, so look, it's been a busy week, but believe it or not, despite the fact that the Swans have been all over TV and radio for the first 4 weeks, Heather, Melbourne-based media have decided to turn their attention and focus to Collingwood, expectedly, a bit of Richmond, a fair bit of West Coast, and a little bit of Carlton as well. There has nay been a mention of Sydney in some of the major shows.
Yeah, well, I suppose you get, maybe if they've been talking about the surprise packet Swans for the last few weeks, they just feel like they need a bit of variety. But I think it's fair to say that the Sydney Swans thrive in an atmosphere of being completely ignored. And I dare say that West Australian teams also probably do the same thing. So in a lot of respects, that's kind of good, but, pay us some respect. We'll look forward to getting back into the Melbourne news, I suppose, in coming weeks. And I guess we might if we can go 5-0 this weekend.
Well, I mean, if Eddie makes another arse of himself, we're guaranteed to have an entertaining week at least.
Well, let's just say there's a very high probability of that.
Guaranteed, I'd say. I don't watch Footy Classified anymore, but I had a bit of a quick look at one of the episodes when I was trying to find some information from Ross Lyon, and I couldn't help but just admire how clueless and out of touch Eddie Maguire is on Footy Classified. It's the perfect platform for him. He's unfiltered and he just sounds insane.
Well, he is. No, that's come out completely wrong.
No, that's come out completely right. He needs to be medicated.
Well, let's just say that there hasn't been since the departure from the club there hasn't really been an awful lot of public campaign to have him reinstated into the job, which I think sort of speaks volumes. It kind of says, well, Eddie, you did a good job while you were at Collingwood, but we've moved on now.
Yep.
So, and he's freed up to make some fairly outrageous statements, and I think we can safely say that that's definitely going to occur. So no wonder Footy Classified's getting him on.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, Footy Classified's circling the drain and occasionally needs to be flushed, but it is what it is. It's a platform for people with outrageous opinions to voice their completely batshit insane thoughts. So, yay for Footy Classified, giving those crazy people a platform.
Well, indeed, and can I just say that on this particular platform, we enjoy a bit of levity, and we certainly enjoy a few crazy ideas from time to time, but I'd like to think that we were just a tiny bit more considered than some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we would like to recommend you watch shows like The Front Bar, Bounce, for instance. Great shows, highly entertaining, far better and far more footy-focused than Footy Classified.
100%. And now that we're actually talking sort of and promoting other programs, Justin, are you able to tell me what you're currently sipping out of at the moment?
I am currently sipping out of the Swans blog water bottle. We have these up on our Redbubble store. It's a really nice water bottle, insulated aluminium, but they come with a variety of prints. We've got a retro print, retro style print. We've got a Swans blog print and a print on red and a print on white. They are very, very nice. I think I've posted up a picture of this one on Facebook.
Yeah, no, they're pretty cool. So if our listeners out there are fans of the blog and are fans of this cast, they might want to cast their eye over some of the merchandise available on Redbubble.
Yeah, it's good, and we said it last show, but anything that does get sold, even the very minuscule amounts that come back as revenue, we chuck it straight back into the cost that it takes to run the blog and generate the content that we do. But enough of the discussion. Let's get into the podcast itself, Heather. We don't have too much on the agenda except for the fact that Dane Rampy is the main point, and he's been playing again 2 weeks with a broken hand, or in this case, a broken finger.
It's weird, isn't it? What's with the hand injuries? So we also have Isaac Heaney out with a busted hand, and now we've got Dane Rampy out with a busted finger that I believe he's had to have surgery on. So it's obviously not something that he can just manage. Very weird, disappointing. You know, love to see Dane Rampy back in that team. Sorry, Dan. Definitely not Dan. Definitely a Dane with that moustache. We'd love to see him back in the team as soon as possible. I don't know. How do you think it's going to affect the back line?
Well, GWS's forward line isn't what it used to be. Certainly, coming up against teams like Geelong and Melbourne, it's going to be pretty difficult to deal with, especially if Cameron's back in the side. It's Jeremy Cameron. And, I mean, imagine Gary Rowan, Jeremy Cameron, and Tom Hawkins in the forward line, and we've really just got Tom McCartan, maybe Colin Reardon, maybe even Malikan, maybe even Will Gould has had a debut by then. So it's going to be a very inexperienced and very, I want to say, green backline. So it's a good opportunity for those players to really show what they can do.
Well, I think so. I think there's also a big responsibility there for Jake Lloyd. Like, he's a senior backline player and he's going to have to be marshalling the troops. And what are your predictions in relation to ins this week?
Well, it's an interesting one. So the outs that we've got, obviously, Dane Rampy, not Dan Rampy, Dane Rampy with the broken finger and Isaac Heaney with the broken hand. They're both out for a month. I think the obvious one has to be James Rodbottom. He has to come back in.
Yep, I totally agree with you. He was really good last year in an average year for the Swans. So you'd think that if he's fit, they'll slot him back in somewhere. Yeah,
100%. And then you're looking Dylan Stevens. He can't even get a game, and he was very impressive for us last year. But that could also mean that we might do another change, such as Nick Blakey, who struggled a bit in the last couple of weeks. They might swing a change for him. I wouldn't be too surprised on that one either.
No, no, you're right. I do like Nick Blakey, the X factor there, because he can do kind of weird things out of nowhere.
Yes, yeah, he can.
So he's quite unpredictable, and there is something attractive about having an unpredictable player. But having said that, you know, the coaching staff really need to make a decision as to what value he can bring, even if he's not gaining sort of a lot of possessions and making a lot of impact on the scoreboard. So be very, very interesting to see that one.
I think the issue with his unpredictability is that he is so unpredictable he doesn't even know what he's going to do. So,
Yes.
so just
Yes.
watching him run around on the field, it's just like, mate, I can't even figure out what he's going to do. So, yeah, anything can happen. This guy is just the epitome of anything goes. Anything goes Friday.
Yep. We'll find out more. But you know what? He might put in a big one on Saturday and just come out and kick 3 goals and be really influential. So I'm really hesitant to say, yep, just give him a spell, because I'm just not sure.
He did that last year. There was a little bit of criticism about his performances last year, and then he came out and had a couple of really big games.
Yeah, and I think he's that player who they're happy to have in the team because he does try really hard defensively. He does, he's happy to do the chase down tackles. He's happy to put in and not be, the key forward. He likes to sort of be a little bit of that player who can just pop up and surprise. So, yeah, I don't really know the strategy with Nick Blakey. I didn't think he was bad last week, but I think that he can definitely produce more, and I'm sure he would like to produce more because he seems to be, quite a committed and dedicated young man. So let's watch with interest on that one.
I guess the other one also, and this we put a question out on all of our social channels during the week, who comes in for the missing pair, and we got, I'd say, at least a dozen different versions of combinations of players who could possibly come in. We had questions about where Caden Brand is at. Heather, I genuinely don't know where Caden Brand is at.
No. Well, either do I, so probably best not to ask me.
Well, this is a good opportunity. This might be the sort of match that Caden Brand could be well suited for. Then you've also got Lewis Melican, who has been very close to the senior side the entire year. He did play some of the preseason matches, and in the scratch matches, he has been pretty good. Well, they are scratch matches, so, slight grain of salt there. So he would be the obvious in.
I think so, mainly because you can only carry so many first year and very raw players, and I reckon the Swans at the moment might be a bit maxed out in that area.
Yeah.
So in actual fact, while I think we've all had some thoughts over the last few years about whether Melican is consistently up to standard, I think that he has a bit going for him in terms of experience and smarts. I think really I'd prefer him over a debutant, to be frank.
Yeah, and look, that's the third option as well, is that we debut another player in Will Gould and give him a go. But the thing is, he hasn't been near the senior team at all this year, so that would be a massive, massive risk.
Yeah, I think so. I would prefer to wait on that one.
Yep, so we won't know the teams until tomorrow. So for those who are listening to the podcast, hopefully you listen to it before Friday 7 p.m. or roughly 6:35 p.m. on Friday. But if you have listened to it after Friday 6:35 p.m, you will be able to say you were right or you were wrong to us, which is fine. Happy with that?
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so let's get into the social media part of our podcast. We put out a question to our listeners and followers. The question was, Toby Green is on fire. Who gets the job and how do we stop him? He snagged best in ground and 5 goals in each of his last 2 matches. Heather, we got a lot of responses, and there are quite a few that we might personally have enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed quite a few of them, but none that we can really read out.
No, well, this is a family show. We do encourage the kids to listen in with mum and dad. So on that basis, we'll just move right along and potentially just cover off on the ones that we actually can,
Yes.
in all sincerity, read without causing some sort of, maybe the cops to show up at my front door.
Well, there's a couple of, bleepy kind of words every now and again, but we certainly don't treat this show like we're a squad of sailors here, so we can't read some of the good ones out. There were some rippers, but can't read them out. So we're going to the ones that we can.
Absolutely. Maybe that's sort of like a hint for next time, kids. If you want to actually get a readout on the show and a mention, potentially try and keep it clean. That would be great.
Yeah, and definitely no personal harm.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll kick it off. Mark from Facebook, he said, Will Gould, give him a crack. And he also said Malikan was best on ground in the scratch match versus the Giants, which was last weekend.
Good comment. I like that one. Jonathan from Twitter said, we need the whole ground pressure to shut down any supply. That's the only way to do it. So he's obviously suggesting that stopping Toby Green is not a one-man job, it's a whole team job, and that's actually another thing that I support.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we did with Richmond. We shut them down, and it paid dividends in the end. So we go to Lynn from Facebook. She said, 2 players must tag Toby, which could be interesting if he's playing at full forward for the entire match.
Yeah, do you think he will? I mean, he's not a great midfield player, to be honest, so I think he's probably better as a forward. So, yep.
I think they will.
Yep, I think so. Indrek from Facebook says, you can't let Toby run, as in run and jump. Someone needs to just get in his way. He's not tall, so his marking strength comes from him running and jumping. Yes, agree with that. He hasn't really answered the question, though. We asked him who gets the job, and he sort of said, that's the way Toby plays. Well, yes.
Yeah.
Who's going to do that? Interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's move right along.
Yeah. Sydney Swans chick from Instagram. We need a similar strategy as to the way we played against Richmond and needed to shut Dusty down. Between Hewitt, Cunningham, McCartan and Campbell, I think we could do it. That's a good point. We did a lot of handovers depending on where he was on the field at that particular point in time.
Yeah, and that sort of backs up the other... a couple of other people who've sort of indicated that we need more than one. It's going to take more than one player to do the job. Luke from Facebook says that George Hewitt is the man. He's tagged some really informed guys out of the game before, and I'd back him to do it again. Well, we'll see.
It's interesting, though, because Hewitt played mostly as a defender last week against the Bombers, so... Could be an interesting makeup there of like how they're going to form the side and how they're going to set the defence up. I mean, we might not even get a replacement defender.
No, I'm not sure about George Hewitt either. I don't know whether that's his best position. So jury's out for me on that one.
It's an interesting one. It's one of those things to watch definitely for the weekend. Jack from Facebook, he has actually given a bit of a curveball on this one, and it did trigger a bit of fierce debate on Facebook, but he has said Campbell on him 100% has the size, athletic ability to run with him all day.
Controversial. What do you think, Justin?
I think he's going to stay inside the forward 50 at all times, and he's going to get probably outbodied in about 100% of the contest he's going to attend against Toby Green.
Yep. So Ronnie from Facebook says, I'd play him the same way we did against Richmond with Martin. It will get him frustrated and he'll start giving away free kicks. And that is always, of course, the X factor with Toby Green.
Yeah.
He does struggle sometime to maintain his composure. I wouldn't like to see the Swans deliberately baiting him. I'd just like to see him being beaten on merit.
Oh, there's teams who have baited him before and he's just ripped them to shreds. The guy... As far as footballing ability goes, he is a freak. He is amazing. He can do anything, just like... You put him in the top group like Franklin, Martin, Toby Green. You could have even said Josh Kelly from the Giants at one point. Patrick Dangerfield. Jal Solwood, probably like 7-8 years ago when he was still youngish. Lockie Neal last year. Just that really top level of midfielders and forwards who can do like anything, and the way they impact the game it can swing it.
He's definitely a really compelling player to watch. I think my comment about him would be that consistency has not been a feature of his career thus far. He's tended to have some really big highs and pretty low lows. So sort of let's just see where that ends up on Saturday. I think he's kicked 13 goals so far, which is a pretty
Yeah.
good return from 4 matches. So, you know, I think he's going to be a real handful, and I'm absolutely certain that the Sydney Swans are planning some strategies against him because they just don't want him, going out and kicking a bag.
Yeah. Well, he's kicked more goals than any of our players so far this season, and he's got two bags of 5. Both of those were best on ground. So he's in some form. He is in some fierce form. And he's not just marking on a lead, he's marking in contest. He's showing that he can basically play the same way Dustin Martin plays on the forward line. And he's really, really good and dangerous at it. So I'm a little worried in this one because if you go back 4 or 5 years ago, Nick Smith would be 100% the perfect person for him. And he has beaten Dane Rampey on occasion. So it's kind of one of those ones where I'm not too sure what the perfect matchup for this one is going to be.
Me either.
So we are stepping into the preview of the match. It's an interesting match in this one, Heather, because last year the Giants were coming down a bit and we were definitely not far from the bottom. And it was predicted this year that Giants would slide a bit because of all the off-season trading that they did, certainly with some of their key players, and the young kids that they brought in. While the Swans were anticipated to rise, but certainly not perform the way that they are playing at the moment.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation because we've only had 4 rounds. So at what point does your preceding form tell you exactly how you're going to be throughout the whole season? Yeah. So statistically, and I know that you've got some stats that you'd like to share with the listeners, it's really hard to judge where the two teams are at in the respect that the Giants' form has been pretty average, but then they came out and played really well against Collingwood and won.
Yep.
And the Swans have been 4-zip and nobody expected that. So
yeah, exactly.
For me, it's pretty hard to read.
And that Collingwood game could have gone either way at three-quarter time. And going by the way Collingwood were playing up until that point, they deserved to win the match. It's just that I don't know what happened at three-quarter time. They either faded from injuries, they switched off. A whole combination of things happened at three-quarter time, and they lost the plot. And GWS just ran right and got their first win. And they performed well on the day, and they executed when they had to. But there is a bit of a trend though, Heather, with the way that they have played in the first 4 rounds.
And what sort of trends are you seeing from them?
I am seeing some good pressure. So they were narrowly missed out on the win in round 3. They've had some up and downs. Round 1 as well was one that they could have won. But you have a look at their 1%ers. They are ranked number 1 in the AFL for 1%ers. And this is something that Swans in the first couple of rounds were ranked very, very high on. But the Giants are ranked number 1. They were also ranked number 2 for intercepts, whereas Sydney's trailing a fair way back in 12th. But then you also have to look at how much of an impact the loss of Davis is going to be and how that's going to affect their forward line. Because they're going to have to put someone quite inexperienced on Lance Franklin. And you can really exploit that with Lance Franklin, Sam Reid, Hickey, Papley, Goulden, and just rotate players through there like crazy and just force the one-on-ones.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think it's fair to say that the Swans are doing better statistically in just about every sort of important category I'm seeing here. 4th for marks, 1st for marks inside 50. What a terrific statistic to be leading the AFL in, marks inside 50. 1st for goals and 1st for goal assists. So in terms of average per game. So the Swans are actually looking really good, but statistics, like I said, can be a little bit rubbery in terms of a form guide at any point, but in particular only after 4 games. So, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think generally speaking, it is fair to say that the Giants' forward line is a work in progress without Cameron, because they've had him now for an awfully long time. And of course, the other element that's been brought in is the fact that Rampy's gone out, and I certainly didn't anticipate that. Last week.
No one would have, and no one even knew he was playing with a broken finger except the club, and it didn't even look like it affected him. It was playing very good football.
No, which is actually outstanding player management and management of information. So I mean, good on the Swans for that, because you don't want to give away that kind of information, which is excellent. But I can only imagine that Dane Rampy's not a wimp, so if they've sent him off for surgery, it's because it actually has to happen, and the players' welfare is far above anything else.
Yeah, and look, that win that Giants had last week was a really, really impressive win, given that they had Matt DeBoer, Phil Davis, and Stephen Cornelio out injured, and they're not short-term injuries; they're out for quite a while, and they managed to win. And Jeremy Finlayson, he's a dangerous forward. He's one of those ones who doesn't get a massive amount of stats. He doesn't kick a lot of goals, but he can do a lot of damage when he has an opportunity to do so, and he's really hard to match up on. Shane Mumford, he is. I'm not really sure what the vocabulary kind of escapes me right now, but he's almost like the cultural centre of that club. And you can't really underestimate the impact that one of your coaches coming off the bench and just having a massive impact against one of the premier ruckmen can have on the side. And he was one of their main instigators for that turnaround and driving forces to really push them towards that win in the end.
Is there anyone in Sydney who doesn't love Mummy? I mean, there must be a lot of Sydney Swans supporters who still love Mummy. I mean, I know I do.
I do, except when we're playing him.
Exactly. But I mean, you called Toby Green a freak. Well, I would call Shane Mumford a freak to still be playing and to still be playing well. He's the human battering ram. He still influences the outcome of games. He's quite a cult figure, and I think he's actually fantastic for the game. And I actually love watching him play. So that's part of the attraction, frankly, for me on the weekend.
Well, it's interesting too because there is discussion about whether or not he's going to play, and I would really like to see the matchup of Mumford and Hickey if it's possible, because we've seen the matchups of Mumford and Naismith, and it hasn't exactly gone Naismith's way, and we're seeing him play against Sinclair, and Sinclair hasn't exactly played well against him. In fact, Mumford's completely and utterly dominated him, so I'm really looking forward to seeing if this can happen against Hickey.
Yeah, 100%, and I think we all think that Hickey has just been quite the revelation, given that he was extremely underwhelming while he was at West Coast, and frankly his previous two clubs might have found him underwhelming as well, because he's been around the world in 80 days. He's ended up at the Swans, and his first 4 games you actually couldn't fault.
He's
100%.
Exactly.
100%.
He would be leading the Bob Skilton medal at the moment. He's probably leading the Brownlow count for us at the moment. He's leading the AFLCA vote for us at the moment. We have our own player ratings. He's leading that. We have our own player of the year. He's leading that, and he's leading the fans' player of the year that we post up.
Jeez. Let's all get on the Hickey bandwagon. That sounds magnificent. Let's get down to the tab and put on a bet.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm already down there ahead of you. I'm recording from tab.
Awesome.
We've even got our fans doing like pictures of photoshopping players with like Hickey's on their neck going, yeah, Hickey just dominated that player again. It's fantastic. It's amazing to see how much the fan and the wider community, the supporting community has really... I'd say adopted and brought on and embraced him. It's been sensational.
Well, I was not a believer, but I'm getting close to being a believer. Justin?
Yeah, I wasn't a believer either. But if you try, you can make a believer out of me. Mm-hmm. And I believe. He has been fantastic. Love him. Some of those stats you mentioned before. Marks inside 50. And this is where it gets really interesting. Goals and goals assists. Giants are ranked 18th, 17th, 16th, and 10th, respectively. But the other main one is Swans are the 4th lowest turnover team. They average 66 per game. Giants are the worst. They average 80.3 per game, which is very interesting with their intercepts, where the Giants are ranked 2nd with 81.3 and the Swans 12th with 69.5.
Yeah, that's an interesting stat, isn't it? Yeah. So what do you read into that relating to the match this weekend?
They are more than capable of winning the ball. and they use it quite poorly. Would be basically the best way to describe it. They're not good at getting the ball inside forward 50 at all.
No, and my observation from having watched the GWS game against Collingwood last week was that certainly for at least 2/4 of the game, there were a lot of turnovers. It was like a bit of ping pong there. One team would win the ball and then they'd turn it over and kick it directly to the other team. And it wasn't what I would term a particularly high-skilled display, no. But I think that GWS earned their win. So, and I'm sure that that's something that they've been working on this week, is their accuracy, particularly based on what they know of the Swans.
Well, Callan Ward was enormous for him last week. 37 disposals. Lockie Ash, 11 marks. Finlayson was fantastic again. He had 10 score involvements. Jacob Hopper, who's really come on, 19 contested possessions. And Tim Taranto's continuing, arguably, Giants Player of the Year so far. And he just had another enormous game as well. So they still have that really deep midfield, but they just haven't been able to connect up their defence and their forward line at all. And believe it or not, that's been the story of their entire existence, of just star talent on every line in the field, but seemingly cannot connect it and get it working. Because when they click, forget it. You're not in the game when they click.
Yes, and we all hope that it doesn't happen this weekend.
Yeah, I know, right? I know, because there's been a few times in these derbies where they click, and it might just be that passion that gets them across the line. And damn, I hope it's not this week, because that'd just be shattering, I think.
It will be. I'm hoping that the home ground advantage helps us. You're looking for a big crowd. I know that I heard on our radio news here today that the both clubs are sort of urging fans to pack out the SCG, and I'm hoping to see a sea of red and white.
Yeah, it's really interesting with the rivalry between the clubs. There's really no animosity between the clubs. It's really just this media-driven rivalry, which is great for Sydney, but it's also kind of, I guess in a way, it kind of makes me chuckle a bit when I watch how close the teams are and how close the players are, and then there's all this Sydney versus Sydney sort of thing, and it's just it's not really there.
Yeah, no, they're keen to play against each other and to win, but I think it's probably some years left in the making, that rivalry, and potentially I think it'll be enhanced, that the whole rivalry thing, when there's finals matches between the two clubs. I think that's part of the magic there. Yeah,
exactly. But there's a lot of areas on the field that Sydney are up at the moment, and it's just going to be a really interesting match to watch. I guess from our perspective, we'll be at the ground, so it might be a bit heart in mouth for a fair bit of that one, Heather. But hopefully not too much heart in mouth.
I'm expecting to bite my nails.
Yeah, I'm expecting to have none left at the end of the game too. Let's kick on into our matchups, key points, and predictions. Heather, could you please kick us off with your matchup?
Yeah, so today I have looked at Tom McCartan up against Harry Himmelberg. So Harry's a key forward. He's kicked 7 goals in 4 games, so he's been thereabouts, but I think he needs to step up here. You just can't expect Toby Green to kick 5 every week. In general, I think we've discussed earlier that the GWS forward line is still trying to sort itself out following the departure of Jeremy Cameron. I do note that Jesse Hogan has played a practice match, but isn't back in the main team yet. He's obviously going to be somebody who could contribute in the future. So I'll be interested to see how Harry plays. I think that McCartan is the kind of player who could give Himmelberg a few headaches. But with Rampy missing, he really has a really big responsibility, and I hope that they've got a bit of a team approach to defending Himmelberg, because I do rate Himmelberg in general. I think he's quite an accurate kicker, so you need to prevent him actually getting the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was a really good second or third forward when you go all the way back. When they had John Patton in the side and Jeremy Cameron, he was always that third forward who could do a lot of damage, because he got opponents who maybe weren't good enough against him when he really was as good as a second forward. So yeah, it's interesting now he's got the key defender on him now, and whether or not he can hold up. And really good point about Jesse Hogan. If they did bring him in for this one, This would be a match where I'd be a bit nervous every single time the ball goes past halfway because it could do some damage to us.
100%. I feel like he's undercooked. I think he needs a little more time, out of that main team. But interesting to see that he's sort of getting ready to come back.
Yeah. Well, for my matchup, and this is one that hasn't really got to mention too much in our social responses, but I've actually gone for Harry Cunningham and Toby Green. So we've talked about Toby Green a lot, but I think Harry Cunningham is the right player to go with him. He doesn't get beaten too much in one-on-ones. He has the leg speed, and he's turning into a bit of a Nick Smith, a lockdown defender who can use the ball quite well.
Yeah, I like his speed. And I think he's quite experienced too, so he's not going to be outsmarted by Toby Green. And he's also happy just to do a job, isn't he? If the coach gives him a job, he'll just go out and do it. So I actually really like the concept of that matchup. So, yeah, that's a thumbs up from me.
All right, key point, Heather, please.
So Don Pike, he has been noted a lot, really, in, I guess, the media, and also just general supporters have noticed that Don Pike has come into the Swans as an assistant coach. And I note that David King, pretty reliable commentator, says that he gives him a rave review. They're all talking about the Swans' ball use and how it's become far more attacking. They've got the best attack in the competition right now, according to David King. And they're putting that down to the influence of Don Pike and the way he coaches, as opposed to the way, Longmire has traditionally coached. And Tom Harley, the Swans CEO, says there's more to it than just bringing in Pike, and no doubt they've done their work in terms of recruiting and the way they've developed young players. But, I just see that the way the Swans are playing, it's bringing older players back into the game. So JPK, Josh Kennedy, he's not really running much these days, John Kennedy. Josh Kennedy has looked a bit slow, let's face it, he has looked a bit slow in recent times, but it's actually the way his young teammates are playing is actually bringing him into the game. And in fact, he's looking a bit quicker. Now, I know it's just probably an illusion, but it's a good look. It's a good look. So I just reckon that this could be the best recruiting move that Sydney's made.
Yeah, 100%. And Luke Parker, he looked like he's taken about 5 years off his game the way he's playing. There was one thing I forgot to raise a bit earlier, but I'm going to raise it now. And I think this... So you've got Tom Pike who's come in, but I think the recruits as well that they've brought in have really helped much more than anyone has possibly expected. Errol Goulden, 4 games into his career, is ranked, I believe it's second or third top player for shots on goal for passes inside 50. And this is bypassing a lot of players like Daniel Rich, who has been up there, Dean Zorko, and a bunch of other players like that. 4 games in, he's already ranked elite in a number of categories. So, yeah, it's phenomenal watching the team at the moment.
What's your key point, Justin?
Look, injuries leave both teams defensively stretched. Now, Swans, we've got a lot of defenders in depth, but they haven't had a lot of game time or experience recently. Giants still have some key defenders. They've got Lachlan Keefe, they've got Nick Haynes, they've got Matt Buntine, so they still have plenty of experience. But take Dane Rampy out, take Phil Davis out. They're big players to lose. Yeah,
I think so. The question is, I suppose, who do we think is more stretched? I'm going to say GWS. I mean, certainly their win-loss ratio is worse than ours. So, so you're going to have to say GWS. But you're right. I think there's going to be some, patching up on, from both teams. But I do think it's also a good opportunity for players, new players and young players who are brought in to show what they can do. And look, I think it's pretty evenly matched, I suppose, in terms of outs from both teams.
Yeah.
But I just think the Swans have a bit of an edge.
Yeah, so certainly with the injury list not being as long as it has been in recent seasons. Your prediction for the weekend, please, Heather?
Yep, this is a pretty simple one. I think it's going to be only less than 2 goals or a couple of goals to separate them at the final siren. I'm going to back the Swans because... Why wouldn't I? I'm backing the Swans, but I've got to say that the red lights are flashing based on what I saw with Greater Western Sydney against Collingwood last week. They just had a bit of grit and determination, which is sometimes absent from their game. Now, Brodie Grundy, who is a terrific player and sometimes a match winner for Collingwood, was pretty average, and Mumford did a really great job on him. So it's a different ground, different type of ground. It's a day match, not a night match, etc., etc., etc. But I think it might be close. So, yep, I'm anticipating a bit of sort of fingernail chewing.
Yeah. Look, I've gone for Lance Franklin will kick 5+ goals. With Phil Davis out, he's had the job on him every single time and he's done the job. I can't see their other defenders getting close to stopping him when he gets on a roll.
Well, I like that prediction. Gee, that gets a 2 thumbs up from me. That's fantastic. I mean, certainly Franklin's looked pretty good. He's had a couple of extra days off, hasn't he?
He has 9 days, so he's hoping that 9 days really brought that mojo out of him because he's starting to look like Buddy of old.
He totally is.
Now on to the weekend forecast. Your sure thing, please, Heather.
Yeah, now look, I have a sure thing which is... nothing I'm going to inject any levity into. This is quite a serious thing. Don't want to bring down the whole vibe of our wonderful SwansCast this week, but my sure thing is that I think that we will see more young people struggling with depression and players opting out of the AFL, or in the worst case scenario, actually losing their lives if some of this online trolling doesn't stop. This week we had Andrew Dunkley from the Western Bulldogs, and we know that Andrew is the son of a Swans great. He revealed this week that after he missed a goal in a 2018 match, which would have won them the game against Sydney, he was actually sent a Google Map screenshot which showed directions from Marvel Stadium to the Westgate Bridge, and he was being told, 21 years old, to commit suicide because he made an error in the game. Now, this is clearly disgusting. So this is something, obviously, that Andrew's lived with now for a couple of years. We've had a lot of we've had other sort of examples. From Callan Ward, GWS, who's been sent death threats. We've had the young lady whose name is Taylor, and I've forgotten, but she's the gun.
She was also the image of AFLW as well for a few years.
The image of AFLW.
Taylor Harris.
Taylor Harris, that's right. Yeah. Taylor Harris, yeah, that's right. She has been trolled, was trolled relentlessly for a period there, to the extent that the AFL had to step in. This kind of stuff has absolutely got to stop.
Yeah.
And I just want to urge people, and I rate our Sydney Swan supporters highly. I just want to say that if you're angry after the game because you've seen a player do something silly, they might have done something and we've ended up losing. If you're angry, or if you're angry and drunk, can you please put your phone away until you're sober or you calm down? Because it's this has got to stop. And I just sort of strongly believe that respect and kindness go much further than some of the stupidity we've seen.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And honestly, on that topic, there's nothing more I can add, really, to emphasise that point more. I think you've done it wonderfully there, Heather. My sure thing is a little bit different. Mine, although it does still relate to the Dogs, but my sure thing is the Dogs will absolutely pump the Suns. I honestly can't see the Suns getting anything close to a result out of this match, which is unfortunate because I do enjoy watching them, and they are playing some decent football at the moment. But it's just looking like it's just going to be another one of those seasons for them, just getting derailed by injuries at all the wrong times, and they're running smack bang into a red-hot Western Bulldogs side at Marvel Stadium.
Yeah, they are red-hot, absolutely red-hot, so I'm with you on that one.
Your most at stake, please, Heather?
Yeah, now this is a bit of an interesting one. In my opinion, I hope it is yours too. So Tom McCartan's older brother, Paddy McCartan, came up to Sydney this off-season, and we all know that Paddy, when he was at St Kilda, had a lot of problems with concussions. Very talented forward, but spent potentially... I haven't actually looked at the stats on this, but he may well have had more time off than on the field. He is coming back. He's lining up for Sydney's VFL team in the season opener on Saturday. He wants to play AFL. He is looking to get back into the AFL. I just think there's a lot on the line here because he's had to take time off to deal with headaches and vagueness and various other symptoms as a result of repeated concussions. And, I just think he's putting himself and his body on the line, and it's his decision. He's an adult. He makes those decisions, but I just think he's got a lot at stake, not so much potentially this match, but just with his comeback as to, what he chooses to do with his life, given that he has some vulnerabilities in that area.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There was a discussion on AFL 360 on Players' Night between Nick Riewoldt and Jared Ruffhead. And when you look at what happened with the AFLW game with the captain who was concussed, and now she's going to miss the AFLW Grand Final because of the mandatory 12-day wait, and Nick Riewoldt discussing about, when it comes to the men's game, if there was someone who was concussed and they thought they were all right. And I think in Paddy McCartan's place, he thought he was okay to play most of these times, even though he clearly wasn't. And there were games when he was concussed when he just continued playing until he was forced off the ground. Players will try and force the issue, and potentially even take legal avenues to play. Whereas Jared Ruffhead put it beautifully in that football is only 10 to 15% of your life. He was looking at it like, if the doctor says I'm going to live to 75 and be a grandfather, I'm going to take that option rather than go out and be concussed or play concussed. I want to live long. I don't want to live until I'm 50.
He's a very sensible man, Jared Ruffhead. What's your most at stake this week?
Lachie Neale. So he's carrying an injury. His stats are way down. Way down. Almost to the point where he's below average in a number of categories. When he was elite last year, he's below average, and Brisbane has suffered. So they have to redeem themselves, and he has to lift. They've got Essendon at the Gabba. This is a must-win. That they lose it, the season's gone. They'll struggle to play finals from 1 and 4.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's been a bit weird because, interestingly, when Lachie Neale was at Fremantle, he was very reliable. He didn't really have a lot of down periods. He wasn't up and down. He was pretty steady. So this sort of unusual and worrying sort of loss of form wouldn't be making Brisbane very happy. It could, of course, be a symptom overall of how the team is going, and perhaps there's some, some magnetism, a bit of chemistry that's not happening throughout the whole team. That could be a reflection of that. But, I'm with you. I think it's a really must win. They absolutely have to win. And I'm going to be interested to see how he bounces back from that, because I just think he's real quality. And I don't believe he's the kind of player to, spit it. I think he's, I think he's really sensible, and I think he's a professional player. So I'm hoping that he can bounce back, because I'd really like to see that.
Well, David King on AFL 360, I think it was last night when they do the watch things, he ripped into Lachie Neale and just showed footage of how poor he is becoming defensively, and how much the Dogs were able to expose that and score goals literally just through him. So, yeah, he really has to show a change. Your doomsday scenario, please, Heather?
Yes, well, Hawthorn to post a 4th straight loss against the unbeaten Demons this weekend. So they won their first match of the season, and it's been nothing since. I watched the Hawthorn match, their last couple of matches, and I think their avenues to goal are very limited. They don't really have a lot of options there. So, I'm going to say it could be another straight flush for the Poos and Wees this week.
Yes. Yeah, look, they're a bit like GWS. Not so much in quality, but they really can't find good, consistent avenues to the goals. My doomsday is a bit of a left field one, but just kind of imagine this one, Heather. The Roos, they've put in some decent-ish quarters here and there. They put in 2.5 quarters of good quality effort, and like really good earnest effort against Adelaide. Led at 3/4 time. If they continued, they may have even won the game. Except their last quarters have been dreadful beyond belief. They come up against Geelong at GMHBA Stadium, and just imagine if they upset and tip over the apple cart. That's my doomsday, that Heather, Geelong lose to North Melbourne.
I'm going to say this is because you don't like Geelong, Justin.
No. I don't like either team.
No, either do
But
I.
I think there's something brewing at North Melbourne. There was a bit of a belief there on the weekend, and Geelong didn't have much belief at all. They really didn't. So there's something that there is a potential for an upset. There is potential for an upset here, and really tip that apple cart over. And you can just imagine how absolutely crazy and polar opposite the feedback and discussion will be about both teams.
I think Chris got to be pretty sad about that.
I
And when I say sad, I mean vocally sad.
Hilarity will ensue, I'm sure, when he goes on another crazy rant at his post-match conference.
I'm looking forward to it already.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to this. Let's put some money on it.
100%. 100%. I'll bring all of my cash with me on Saturday.
Yep, exactly. Mine comes in a laundry bag. A couple of coins. That's good. Well, thank you to you, Heather, for joining me again. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the SwansCast Extra.
I love coming on the SwansCast Extra, and I hope everybody's enjoyed the podcast tonight, and I also hope that they can show up in their droves to the SCG on
Please
Saturday.
do.
And yes, we really hope to see you all there. It'd be great to see a packed out SCG. It's been a while since we've seen that, what with COVID and all the rest. So come along, and if you can't actually come along, make sure you tune in on the box or on the radio, wherever you are, and we look forward obviously to hearing from you on our social channels.
100%, and the SCG is getting close to 100% capacity allowance through the state government, so if you're in Sydney, there's no reason not to come. If you've listened this far in, thank you so much. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please drop us a like, drop us a review, let us know about the show, and until next time, go Swans.